Welcome back to Friends and Enemas. My name is Lindsay. I'm your host, and who do I have with me?
I'm Layla.
Layla, tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do for work.
Okay, my name's Layla. Layla the nurse. I'm a pediatric ICU nurse. I'm from Virginia and currently traveling in California. I just do social media on the side with my husband Hasib.
How long have you been a travel nurse?
For, I think, coming up on 3 years, which is crazy.
It is crazy.
Like, time goes by so fast. But I've been a nurse for like 5 and traveling for 3.
Okay. I'm coming up on 5 years too, actually, as a nurse.
No way.
And then been traveling for 4. I don't like telling people that though, because I definitely recommend you wait 2 years before you start traveling. I waited 1 year and I was a little ahead of myself, but do you agree? Like, you should wait 2 years probably.
I think so.
We have reasons for it too.
Yeah,
but.
totally. What I tell people is, like, rather than waiting to like hit some kind of like 2-year mark or 1-year mark, like, you should start traveling when you feel fully comfortable being a nurse. You can take care of the sickest patient on your unit. You can do anything and everything. Then you should start traveling, because I feel like the opportunities to learn those things just aren't there as a traveler. So you might as well get all that under your belt and then jump into travel.
I totally agree with that. So my husband is a year ahead of me in nursing. So he had 2 years. He was ready to be a travel nurse like right away, like a lot of new grads think they are.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, well, we have to get some experience. He gets 2 years, I get 1 year. And I'm like, once I got to my facility, I was like, this could be bad, actually. I don't know if I should have done this. I don't know if I know what I'm doing. I had a whole bunch of like imposter syndrome.
Right.
And then I was honestly just scared. I was like, this probably isn't the best idea, and it's not. That's why I'm telling you guys, because you should wait. I think people say 2 years because when I was a new grad, I was having a really bad day one day, and I decided to go ask all my coworkers, when did you finally stop feeling so stupid on the unit? Like, I felt stupid every single day. I felt like I didn't know anything. I was only like 3 months in. They were like, oh, give it 2 years. It's like, how come they didn't tell me that in school? Like, you have another 2 years before you start feeling confident and comfortable.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean at 2 years that you're just like, I don't need help from anyone.
No.
Just you start feeling more confident as a nurse.
Exactly. And you can recognize when you need help. I think that's like the biggest thing. When you're new, you're not really sure like what you're doing in general, but once you get to a certain point, you know your limitations.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important part. Like, you have to know when to ask for help.
Yes.
And it takes time to like learn those things.
Do you have an example of like something you can think of when you were a new grad, or even, you don't have to be a new grad, but when you realize, like, you look back and you're like, I could have asked for help at that moment. Maybe that wouldn't have happened.
I think like starting off in the pediatric ICU, I'm sure you've heard like on social media and stuff, it is kind of, I mean, I think all areas of nursing are a little cliquey, and just like, you don't feel super comfortable when you're new because the older nurses are a certain way. I've had a really good experience overall, but I think the expectations of you like feel so high when you start. You assume everyone expects you to know everything, and you almost feel embarrassed to ask for help sometimes. And I think the more experience you gain, you realize like no one is above asking for help. You could be a nurse. Like, I've been a nurse for 5 years. There are still things that I need help with, and that's fine. Anyone who judges you for that, like, that's their problem.
It says way more about them than you.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. Not asking for help is scary.
It is scary. I've talked about this before, but I always reiterate, one of my biggest mistakes as a new grad was a med error. And it's because I decided not to ask for help I had a pop-up on Epic on my EMS. Pop-up came up. I didn't understand what it was saying. And I was just like, cancel, like, go away, like, stop popping up.
Yeah.
And it was telling me, this is not the right patient. And I was like, what do you mean this isn't the right patient? This is their med. Like, I was so confused, but I pulled the wrong patient's med. It was luckily the same medication, just wrong patient. So same dose, same medication, wrong patient.
Gotcha.
I gave the med. I went and told my preceptor, I was like, hey, this pop-up kept coming up on Epic, but I'm not sure what it was talking about. And she was like, where's the medication? Did you give it? I was like, yeah. She's like, why did you give it? I was like, I don't know. Like, you kind of just don't know what you don't know.
Totally, yeah.
And then sometimes you make little mistakes, and then you're like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. But
Right.
it did make me stop and be like, you know what, maybe I should fully understand what this pop-up is saying before I just cancel it.
Absolutely.
3 times in a row.
Yeah.
And like continue with it. But I think like going back to why should you wait 2-ish years, or why should you wait until you're ready? You could be thrown into any situation as a traveler. I've had situations where the hospital, for instance, the one I'm at right now, 3 weeks of orientation. Unheard of, I feel like, for a traveler. It's great. It's great. Love that. I'm like 3 weeks and I'm already done with 3 weeks of my contract, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Orientation is great. However, I've also been on the flip side with an hour of orientation and they're like, okay, take these patients. Like, we need you.
Yeah.
So as a new nurse, it's very scary to be thrown into this.
Totally.
And be like, okay, just take this, you know, no orientation. You'll figure it out as you go. And I feel like it's really scary for an unseasoned nurse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a PICU nurse.
PICU.
What made you pick pediatric?
I think I was a NICU baby, which is,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
I was like fine. Like, now that I look back at pictures, I'm like, oh, I look pretty healthy. Like, I probably didn't need to be there, but
But you were.
yeah, I just like something about, I think, me being a baby in the hospital and hearing about that, and then just kind of growing up like in and out of the doctor and stuff with my grandma. Like, I just always wanted to be a nurse. So it's not like I always knew since I was a kid, but it just felt like a natural choice.
Yeah.
Like when the time came to pick a career. And I just like loved kids and thought that being a NICU nurse would be awesome. Like, I was a NICU baby. I'd love to be a NICU nurse. And then going through nursing school and kind of like seeing all the different areas of the hospital, pediatric ICU just really stood out to me because you get the balance of like the cool stuff you get to do as an ICU nurse, but like with kids, you know? So you're still working in peds. And then I think the moment when I really decided was I was working in the ER as a tech. And we got a pediatric code blue, and that whole experience was just so crazy. And I remember like after we stabilized the patient and the PICU team came to pick up the patient and take them to the children's hospital, I was like, I wish I could go with them. Like, I want to see what happens next. Like, I want to be a part of that. And that's kind of when I realized, like, I think that's what I want to do.
Oh, that's cool.
And I did it. And like, honestly, I haven't looked back.
See?
Yeah.
I feel like you probably get this asked a lot too, but like, help me pick my specialty. Yeah. I'm like, I can't help you pick your specialty. That is a daunting task.
It is.
But also, I think a lot of people go into nursing thinking they're going to know exactly which way they want to go.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen a lot. At least it didn't for me.
Right.
I didn't know until fourth semester when we were doing critical care that I was like, okay, I think that ICU is probably something I want. Because before I thought it was PICU because I got to see the ICU aspect of it. I was like, oh, yeah, I really like this. And then I saw adult ICU and I was like, no, this is where it's at for me.
Yeah.
But then some people go in, they don't know at all. And I feel like they should just like try
Figure
everything.
it out. Yeah.
There's like nurse residency programs. Like, definitely if your hospital has one of those and you're uncertain, you should try that.
Totally. I think like the thing is like everyone, when they're making decisions, they almost feel like whatever decision they make is a permanent one. And it's like, no, girl, like, or boy, you can change your mind. Like, if you're there for 6 months or a year and you hate it, like, there's hundreds of other specialties you can try out, and that's fine. Like, you don't need, I got lucky. Like, I picked what was right for me and I love it still, but like, it doesn't have to happen that way. You can dabble in a little bit of everything, and it makes you a more well-rounded nurse, honestly. Like, the nurses I work with who have done other specialties, they have such a wide range of skills, and it's really like nice to work with them. So
Absolutely.
no experience is wasted experience. You might as well just go for it.
That's a good way to put it. I definitely think you're right on nurses, or like newer nurses really feel like they're stuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, at 6 or guy, sorry, we just keep saying girl. I call everyone girl. At 6 months, like, move on. If you still feel like it's uncertain for you, I had one of my best friends in nursing school. She hated ICU, and I was like, what do you mean you hate it? Like, I love it. So it's like, well, how do you hate it? And I just could not understand. But she eventually left. She moved like 2 or 3 different specialties and finally found she's a PIC nurse now.
Oh, cool.
Loves it. And I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
But you have to like bounce around until you figure out what you want, and that's totally okay, and it's normal. A lot of people bounce around.
Yes.
It's like a normal part of being a nurse.
It's like one of the best things about being a nurse.
Yeah.
Like, you don't like your job today, you can literally get a new one tomorrow.
Exactly.
Like, I love that freedom.
I do too. I think that's why we're travel nurses. We're like, if I wanted to go back staff, this is something also I tell every new or every person that wants to be a travel nurse and they're scared to leave their job, I'm like, that job's going to be open for you.
Oh, yeah.
Always going to be open for you.
They'll take you back in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat. They say that they won't. They probably will.
Yeah.
You might have to wait 6 months. Like some of them have like a 6 months. If you leave, you have to come back. But I guarantee there's another floor that needs you.
Yes.
And then also, if you don't try travel nursing, you'll never know. And it's not for everyone. I don't think it's for everyone.
Yeah.
But you're not going to know until you try it.
Yeah.
What do you think? Why do you think you like travel nursing, or why do you know you like travel nursing?
Oh man. Okay. So like when I worked as a staff nurse for my hospital, I was so loyal. Like I was so loyal to that place. Like anything they told me to do, I would have done it. I was so scared to make content on social media because I was like, you know, my coworkers knew I had an Instagram and I just like didn't want to rub anyone the wrong way. Like I was very cautious and I like loved my job so much that like that was my like priority, you know? But then I kind of had to start travel nursing. I didn't really want to. But once I started travel nursing, I was like, this freedom is incredible. Like I'm only at this place for 3 months. Like I can do what I want.
Oh yeah.
And it's so nice. Like my social media has grown so much just because now I have the confidence to talk about things and do things that I probably wouldn't if I was a staff nurse. I mean, it's not like I just go do like talk about literally whatever I want and don't care at all, but it's just I don't really care anymore what anyone thinks, you know? And I have travel nursing to thank for that, honestly. Like I was such a people pleaser before and it definitely showed up in my work life, but I don't have that anymore and I love that.
See, that's one of my favorite things. I think that's something my husband's a travel nurse too, if you don't know. And we both frequently talk about like the benefits of travel nursing for us. And again, everyone's different. It's not for everyone, but not being a part of unit politics is like one of my favorite things ever.
Oh yeah.
Or unit culture. Because typically, you know, this is your family type thing is typically toxic. I'm not saying that every unit
It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. It's like, yes, they can be family somewhat, but also they could gaslight you into coming in for more shifts, making you feel bad for staying late. Like there's just so many things.
Yes.
Or even like clock out at 7:23, not 7 o'clock, right when you're done. You have to wait till 7:23. As a traveler, I clock out the moment I'm done. Because that's typically for like benefit issues. Like they have to stay for X amount of time for their benefits. I'm like, you don't pay for my benefits.
I don't need that.
Goodbye. I'll leave at 7 if I'm done with report. But there's like things, and also I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that a little bit. Like, I mean, I'll take my manager's advice and stuff, but being a part of a unit as staff, you have like specific things you have to do because you're staff, and I'm not about that life.
Yeah, me neither. Like staff nurse me worked so much overtime, was a part of like 8 committees.
Because you feel like you have to be.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No. And it just like, I don't know. When I was a staff nurse, I almost let my job consume me. Like it was everything to me, you know, like I didn't want to go travel nursing with my husband. Yeah. That's how much I loved my staff job, you know? And then once you get out of it, you're like, oh wow, I was really a little too immersed in my job.
You kind of see like what you didn't see while you were there. You had like blinders on.
Exactly.
And then you see like a different light, and you're like, oh, actually this might be a little bit better.
Yeah. It's just, I don't think it's healthy to let anything consume you like that. Like you need balance in all aspects of life, and I still love my job, but I do it and I clock out and I literally don't think about it.
You leave work at work.
It's so liberating.
Oh my god, it is so liberating. I feel like after nursing school you're kind of like, what do I do with all this time? I have so much time now, I could do anything. And then work's like, you could do this, come to work, we need you. But you do feel like you have to fill it with work most of the time.
Right.
But now I'm a huge proponent. Like I will work my 36 or whatever my contract is, 36 and go home. I will not work more.
Same.
Don't even ask me. I mean, nicely, I tell them that they come up to me like, do you want to pick up? I'm like, no. And by the way, don't ever ask me. I will never say yes.
Yeah. And it's almost like as a traveler, it's not even worth it because it's like your hourly gets taxed. So
I was just talking about this
that much money.
Exactly. With another coworker, they were like, I picked up, you know, if I would have been staff, I would have got this much money, but I got 80, it ended up being like $80, and it wasn't a full shift that they picked up, but still I was like, was it worth it? Probably wasn't worth it.
Right.
To me, that wouldn't have been worth it, but you know, everyone's a little different.
Have you worked any overtime since starting traveling?
On purpose? No.
Yeah, I haven't picked up it's been 3 years since I picked up a shift.
Yeah, no.
Like an extra shift.
No, no. I do not pick up extra shifts.
Love that.
I'm trying to think. Like, I really don't think I have at all.
We had a 48-hour contract and we almost died.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
So we had a 48-hour contract in Marysville,
Where's
California.
that? Oh, okay.
It's over by Sacramento, kind of.
Okay.
Small town, fine. Like I liked it. It was fine. 48 hours though. Killed me. Killed
I
me.
mean, it doesn't sound like a lot when you're looking at the contract, but then when you think about it, it's like that's a whole 4th day that you're at work every week.
And it's never just 48 hours. There's a couple hours here and there that are added on. It turns into like a 50+ hour week. And, people that work normal, like 60-hour weeks are like, oh, it's, oh, you only work this much. I'm like, no, we're on our feet. It's physically, mentally, and emotionally draining.
There's a reason why you only work 3 days.
There's a reason.
It's not compatible with life.
No, it's literally
Work
not.
more than that.
No, it's not. And I won't do it again. I mean, I never say never, but like you have to pay me a lot of money
Yes.
for me to do it again.
I see those contracts. I scroll right past them. Like, I do not care.
Or if you get like, does this ever happen to you? You see a good contract, you're like, oh, nice. And you start talking to the recruiter, and then they're like, by the way, it's 48 hours. I'm like, just take me off your roster. I don't want any 48-hour
There's
contracts.
a children's hospital in California in a very desirable location that I've been dying to live in, but the hospital is notorious for requiring a 4th shift every other week.
I already know what you're talking about, but I won't say it.
It's like they do not crack on this rule. Like, it's always been there. My recruiter with one of the companies I work with is like, I've been a recruiter for 8 years and they've never gotten rid of this like extra shift requirement. And I'm like, well, then I'm never going to go there.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. Even though it's every other week, like I know I'm going to hate my life.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it to me.
I honestly feel like we're going to take a little break after this contract, which is another pro for traveling because we make enough money that we can take a break.
Love that.
We have third-party insurance. We don't use the insurance from our agency or the hospital because that's another question we get a lot. But we're going to take a break, and I have senioritis like right now. I'm like going to work and I'm like kind of dreading it.
That's so funny.
I try my best and everything, but it gets hard. Like it's just a lot.
Yeah,
it can be a lot.
It totally is. But yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of travel nursing is just like, I really do feel like I work for myself, or like I'm my own boss. Like I can look at my year and decide like when I need time off for family events or when I want to go on a trip. Like I purposely plan to be off for 2 to 3 months so that I could have my birthday month and my husband's birthday month off.
Birthday month? It's not even a day. It's a month.
It's just so nice to be able to do that. Like I can't think of any other career or any other job where you have that kind of flexibility. And it is just so nice. Gives you more time to work on your own endeavors, like your social media or whatever side hustle you might have. It's like you can pour into that. It's so nice.
I totally agree with that. Do you have social media considered a side hustle for you?
Yes.
Do you get a lot of questions on, how did you start? How can I start? Do you want to give people like some advice?
Yeah, I think when I started off, it was kind of more like it was before COVID. I graduated nursing school in 2018, and I just felt like no one understood what nurses do, and that like really bothered me. Like my family would always like poke fun, like, "Oh, well, you're not a doctor, you're just a nurse," and like I was like, if these people knew, like if they saw what I did, like they would not say stuff like that to me. They'd probably feel bad actually. So I was like, I just want people to get a glimpse at what it's like to be a nurse, and so I started off just like kind of documenting I kind of treated it like a diary. Like I would post about my day or like what I learned. And I think you just have to have like the passion to talk about something. And that's how you start off. And it just grows like naturally after that.
Yeah.
Like it's been a slow journey, but I feel like slowly I've like learned like how to relate to people, what to talk about, and it has grown into like what it is now. You can start adding in like more of your life in there if you want to, and people will be interested because they've like followed you for so long, or they've like been a part of your journey. So I think you just have to be passionate about talking about something and just go for it. Like just start.
Yeah, just start. Because I think everyone feels like, well, I'm not very good, or I'm not very good at editing or being in front of the camera or talking about this or whatever. But it honestly just, you have to practice. Practice makes perfect, especially in social media.
Yeah.
Then also like, take some ideas, don't steal ideas, but take some ideas from people that you follow. Inspiration, that's the word. Get some inspo from people.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a great way of putting your content. It was like a diary. That's how I feel when I'm watching it too. Like, your voice is very gentle too, so it's like reading a page of your diary, which is very it's intriguing. Like people want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you felt that day. But it's true, that's a great way to put it.
It's like it's almost like therapeutic for me, like to talk about things. And like I go back on my own page a lot and just like see like what I used to post about or what I used to talk about. And like, it reminds me of things that I wasn't necessarily thinking about. So it's literally like a diary.
Yeah. It's like, it could be like more inspo for you too in the future. Like, oh yeah, I liked talking about this. I forgot I used to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I used to make this style of video. Maybe I should get back to that instead of trying to do like this, you know?
Yeah. No, that's fun.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable talking about money that you make on social media?
I love talking about money.
I figured that you like talking about money because you were on, I always get the name wrong.
Salary
Transparent Street.
Yeah.
Which I love their channel too because it's bringing awareness to all kinds of jobs.
Yeah. Hannah Williams, who started it, she's so nice. She's actually from the DMV too, where I'm from.
Really?
Yeah. She's super cool. And I think like what she has done with Salary Transparent Street is so inspiring. Like she took a conversation that is so uncomfortable and that people are so unwilling to have and made it so normal. Now there's like so many other pages that do the same thing. Like go ask random people on the street how much money they make. And it's just, I think it's such a good thing for all of us.
It is. And she started that.
Yeah.
It's like cool.
It's awesome.
And like as a travel nurse, that's something that you're either really big in talking about money or you're like very closed off. There's like no in between.
Yeah.
But travel nursing made me very big about talking about money because specifically that's how you see, I mean, for instance, I've told you this already, but me and my husband worked at one hospital during COVID. We're both ICU nurses, day shift. We were making $4,200 a week. Separately each, and we met another cardiac ICU nurse who was night shift. Night shift typically makes more than day shift. That's like well known. And cardiac ICU specifically typically makes more than medical ICU. And he was making $1,500 less than us a week. And I was like,
that is crazy.
Same agency, same hospital, just a different unit, but he should be making more than us, period. And I was like, you need to talk to your recruiter, like period. There's just no reason to not bring this up to your recruiter. And he was like, well, I'm scared. I don't want to make her upset. Well, you don't have to like yell at her. She might not realize. Let's be fair. Maybe she doesn't, but at least bring it to her attention. And then tell her you want to match. Like we should be matching pay. That's why we should talk about it.
Totally. I think that's kind of what inspired me to start talking about how much money I make too. I'm really lucky. My husband's an accountant. He knows a lot about taxes and just like financial stuff in general. Yeah. So like when I started travel nursing, he really helped me navigate the intricacies of it. And like I always felt very well informed about the contracts I was taking, about the stipends. And then I would start my contracts and I would work with nurses who were making substantially less than me for the same exact job. And it was usually with like, you know, a different agency or whatever, but it's like there is no reason why you should be getting paid less to do the same job as someone else. Like, and the only reason they can do that to us is because we don't talk to each other about it.
And they often, at least during COVID, I remember them encouraging us not to talk about it. And then I'd bring up that law and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a federal law. We are definitely allowed to talk about our pay in every single state.
Yeah.
And I had several recruiters that tried to threaten me with, okay, well, if you talk about it, then we're not going to work together. Bye. There are other recruiters.
There's a bunch of other agencies and
Good thing there is because that's just wrong. And then it makes them look shady. And I'm not saying recruiters are shady. There is just some, you know, they're making money too. Yeah. So I understand, but
I also think just like we were talking about this earlier, but travel nursing companies and travel agencies thrive off of the confusion and the misinformation that's out there. Like they love a nurse who doesn't ask questions. You just sign the contract and you're willing to take it. No negotiation, nothing. That's their dream.
Yes. I think that's, you know, that's like a really good point saying like misinformation is huge in travel nursing. That's why I'm actually excited. I was telling you for your husband Hasib to have his account because if he's an accountant, he's looking into taxes, travel nurse taxes. I know that you get a lot of questions on it just like I do. And there's so much misinformation out there about it. It's been confusing for me over the past 4 years learning about it. And but
something I've learned from Hasib too is that like tax code and tax law leaves a lot of room for interpretation kind of. So like I think that's where all the confusion stems from. But if you have a background in it, you've had an education in it, then you can like navigate it more easily. Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
It will be for sure. He's been such a great resource and I'm excited to like share him with other nurses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be huge for you guys. I'm excited for you.
That'll be great.
Let's see. What's the highest and lowest contract you've taken? Location, cost of rent, all that stuff.
Highest contract I've ever taken. Oh man, these were the good old days. 6,000 a week.
Oh, hell
in
yeah.
Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah. And then lowest is probably what I'm gonna take soon. 2,700.
Okay.
And yeah, it kind of sucks. Like I was telling you this earlier, but when I started travel nursing, it was very much like the peak. Like rates were amazing, and I've been super lucky. They've been so good my entire travel nursing journey. This is kind of the first time that I'm having to take a lower paying contract, and I'm like kind of sad about it.
Yeah.
But I do think rates, like, you know, they're going to fluctuate. It's normal. I'm not like worried about it. I'm still going to be a travel nurse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the lowest is the one that's coming up.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people right now are kind of debating, is travel nursing still worth it?
Yeah.
And it definitely depends on your situation. Everyone's
Totally.
situation is different. But you guys are dual income, no kids. Right? Is that the way to put it?
Technically, we will be dual income
Yeah.
once he starts his like company. But
Okay.
we've been single income.
But that's like the best thing about travel nursing
Yeah.
is that your single income can count as a dual income.
Absolutely. And you have time to work on things like social media,
Yes.
which
Your
like
other
supplements your
endeavors.
income. Yeah.
Yes. My brain's like going on two different ways right now. I want to talk about like supplemental things that like nurses do, because I think a lot of people think nurses just do nursing, and I feel like almost every nurse I meet has a side hustle of some sort.
Right.
Whether it's Uber Eats, whether it's a whole like a barista, social media, their own, I don't know, education programs and things like that. But it's like interesting.
It is.
Because it shows that like staff nursing alone doesn't pay your bills.
No, it doesn't.
For me, we were living very paycheck to paycheck. We started in Oklahoma in 2019 for me, 2018 for my husband, and I started on $23.50 an hour. And at the time, I was like, oh, I'm raking in the dough. And then taxes came out, benefits came out, and I was like, what the hell is this? I can barely live off of this. And that's a huge reason why we jumped into travel nursing. I was just like, I want to be financially free. I want to work on other things. Nursing was never my plan A. Doesn't mean I'm not passionate about my job. I love taking care of people, but it's never been my plan A. And I want to work on other things. And nursing for me has done that. I feel like especially travel nursing.
Absolutely.
Do you feel? Yeah, you feel.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think like another thing I really thought about before I became a nurse was, or like before I picked a career, was like, what do I want my life to look like? I had a lot of people around me who worked traditional 9-to-5s. My parents worked so much. Like I kind of just saw that no one really had like a ton of free time, and I didn't like that. I hated school, like the Monday through Friday thing. Like I couldn't focus, couldn't pay attention, just like couldn't imagine living the rest of my life like that. And the nursing schedule was so desirable. Like I know a lot of people hate working holidays, weekends, and nights, but for me it was like, I think that's cool. Like it's unconventional, it's fun, you have more days off every week. Like that was a huge selling factor in picking nursing as a career.
That's exactly what I've said too, is that the number one thing was the schedule. It's like working weekends, that was my favorite thing actually as a new grad. That's how I got on day
So
shift.
much more chill.
Yes, I was like, less management, first of all. I love that. Less administration around, but also you get like, I would rather go to the grocery store on a random Tuesday than a Saturday.
Oh my
Any day of
gosh,
the
I
week.
went to Costco on a Saturday once, and I was like, oh my God.
That's when you know. You're like, I fucked up. I should have waited till Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Because once you get to the weekend, it's absolute chaos.
It's a disaster.
But back on the pay, you know, that's kind of with us too. We took a $2,600 contract in Wichita, Kansas. And when I let the world know that, they were like, you're the reason that travel nursing is, the contracts are low. You're taking low contracts. I was like, okay, I'm in Kansas. The cost of living is low. Okay. It's the lowest we've ever paid for rent.
Right.
We're in an RV, but we paid $500 a month. The highest we've paid, I think, is where we are now. It's $2,600 a month. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to look a little different. Cost of living's a little different. So as long as it makes sense to you, like, do what you want.
Exactly, yeah.
But I feel like we need to talk more about pay. Like you said, like you like talking about pay, and it gets more people talking about it the more we talk about it.
Absolutely.
But I still think travel nursing is pretty worth it.
Yeah, me too. It'll always be worth it, just because I can't see myself being tied down the way that I was before. Like I don't have to ask anyone if I want to take time off. I just do it.
Right. You
and
just
I
do
don't
it.
need PTO. Like that is
That's my
So
favorite.
great.
even staff nurses, like you can get 8 days off if you
Right.
can manage to move your schedule around, but you can get 8 days off without any PTO. And I'm like, that, who else can do that? What other
Right.
profession can do that?
Absolutely.
Not even like doctors. I don't think they can do that. I
No.
don't know, but I don't think they can.
No, doctors' schedules, I've learned more about that recently. They work like a certain number of days out of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a lot of days. It's like 20 something days.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
My
We
husband.
work 3 times 4, or 3 times 4. What is that? 12?
12.
12 days a month.
12.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Like,
3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah. That's it.
love that for
I
us.
love that for us. Love that. When people are like, are you going to go back? And I've literally had patients ask this, which it just shows they don't know. This is not how it works.
Yeah.
Are you going to go back and and become a doctor? I'm like, you don't become a nurse and then a doctor. That's not how that works. But number 2, no. And no shade to doctors if they want to be a doctor. That's
No,
great.
I have so much respect for people that make that kind of sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Like, truly, I couldn't
can't.
do it.
Yeah.
I really can't see myself sacrificing as much as they do. Like,
Yeah.
but I value like my time outside of work a lot, and that's why this career was like
That
so
work-life
enticing.
balance. It's so nice. That's why I like to get all my guests talking about like what's their favorite part of nursing or,
Yeah.
or whatever their career is. And I definitely agree, like time off is like the best part for us.
For sure. And it's like I do love like helping people, and like
Absolutely.
the good days are so good, you know?
I was just telling my husband this earlier. We are in a float contract right now. And so we do ICU, PCU, and tele. And if you watch any of my stuff, if I'm on tele, I'm always complaining. I'm like, oh, this fucking sucks. I hate it. Because I just can't handle it. It's not the same.
How many patients do you get on telly?
4, and I know it could be more. People,
Right,
I
that's
get
still
6.
a lot.
It's still a lot when you're used to 2.
Right.
You know, I'm like, I really love my ICU days when I get to go in depth with the patient. I learn something new. There's always something I don't know. I'm like, oh, this is fun. Like I've never had this, or teach me this, or I don't know. I really like my vented and sedated patients. I just, not because they're not talking to me. It's just, that's how my brain works best.
Yeah.
And I like that way better than tele, and definitely med surg. I'm not a med surg, but kudos to those nurses too. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, no, it's really hard. I feel like there's this stereotype that like med surg is easy, or like, you
Girl,
know,
you could
it's
get me.
not. It is so hard. Like the first time I floated to med surg, I remember it was my first travel contract. First of all, I had like 5 patients, and I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, you got to pass all these meds like at the same time. Like, that's crazy. And then one of my patients started to decline, and I had to like, I was like looking in my MAR, like, can I give a bolus? No, you have to page the doctor. They're not even like nearby, like they are in the ICU, so you can go
Yes.
talk to them and they can throw an order. You need to page them, wait for them to call you back. Like,
There's less, where I have worked, there's less autonomy for sure.
but it's hard because you know what they need, you know what to do. You just have to wait to contact the doctor and get the orders. It's such a trip, and you're just, you know, recycling your blood pressure, praying it comes up. Like there's literally
Exactly.
nothing you can do.
And while you're doing that, your 4 other patients are on their call light needing something from
Yes.
you. I don't know how they do it. I really don't. I promise I'm not lying or exaggerating when I say if I have a shift on med surg, I leave crying. I'm at least crying in my car alone. It's just stressful.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. But again, some people really love it. And I'm glad, because again, we need people in these areas. Like
Absolutely.
it's good that some people love it. But ICU me, I'm like very ICU. I always say if med surg was the only option, I wouldn't do it. I would not be a nurse. I really wouldn't.
I say that all the time too.
I need ICU.
Yeah.
Speaking of ICU and pediatrics, so I found this Reddit post. It's on r/nursing, and it says, adult nurses of Reddit, what do you think pediatric nurses do? I thought this was kind of funny because I've never got to work in peds. I had a clinical there, one clinical. And it's funny because in adults, like we talk a lot about like, oh, the poops are massive, but then like NICU, like they're like, oh, it's like a cute little poop, because
Let me tell you, the poops can still be massive.
they can still be, I figured like you have kids, but like kids can have some big old poops.
Yeah.
Not that that's like the main
Right.
subject of our job, but it's just funny, like the things that we view that you might view differently, or
Right.
things. So I'm going to read this little post and
Okay.
like, let me know if you want to chime in.
Okay.
It says, I've been working as a pediatric med-surg nurse for 3 years now. Many times when I encounter a nurse from an adult unit, they seem baffled by the fact that pediatric nurses do work. For example, last week, an adult nurse came to our unit to see if we had any SCD sleeves. Before I could even answer, he starts to explain to me what SCDs are. He was perplexed when I told him he didn't need to explain. He said he didn't know if we used them on kids. Another time, a while back, I was in a skills lab alongside only adult nurses. One nurse made a comment that I probably don't know how to manage chest tubes because all I do is hang out with kids. Do y'all really think we're just glorified babysitters? Which I did not think any of this. I figured if adults need it, children need it. But
Right.
it's like kind of embarrassing. Like, can you stop? It's almost dumbing you guys down.
Right.
As if you're not smart enough to know what this stuff is. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's embarrassing, first of all. And second of all, has this ever happened to you?
Honestly, I feel like I've heard about that happening. It's never happened to me because I think when you tell people you work in the pediatric ICU, their first reaction is, oh my God, like, how do you do that?
Sick
That's
kids.
so sad. Sick kids. Oh, like, they want nothing to do with it. They don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like that stereotype doesn't really exist for PICU in particular,
see.
you know? But I think I have definitely heard, like, oh, you must just like hold babies all day or like whatever. And it's like, no.
No. And also like pediatrics means up to 17, 18 years old.
Right.
Like they could be almost adult looking children. Like it's not just little babies.
Sometimes we do take care of adults. Like in the Peds CVICU, you have kids with congenital heart defects and they want to follow their surgeon into adulthood. So you are taking care of like I've had a 40-year-old patient before.
Oh, see, this stuff I don't know. I always think they come over to us, you know?
No, yeah.
That's
I mean, I think it
interesting.
depends, but it is interesting. During COVID, we had to I remember at my staff job, there was a pediatric or a patient with a congenital heart defect that was pregnant. And because she had the congenital heart defect and her surgeon was a Peds CVICU surgeon, she was a patient on our unit.
Oh no, that would scare me.
Yeah, no, it was terrifying. I was like, babe, like pregnant.
No. Anytime a pregnant lady
The fetal monitor.
something about a fundus. Maybe not right now, but there's something about a fundus happening in your future, and I don't remember it. Anytime we get a pregnant patient, all the adult ICU nurses are like, "No, please, no." Not because we don't love you guys. It's just it's not our
scary.
expertise.
Yeah.
So we're like, if anything goes wrong, we feel like I don't want to screw that up.
Yes.
You know?
And I remember working in the ER, like when you got a pregnant patient, coming in through the door, you took them straight to L&D. Like no one,
That's actually
no one felt
That's like a
comfortable.
stereotype that we know too. Like
Yeah.
if you go to ER, you're going straight to L&D. Like
Right.
we do not mess with you there. One of the comments says, this goes for NICU and mom and baby as well. I floated to med-surg floors and they're genuinely shocked at some of the things that we know or can do. I helped with PPE on a MICU a year ago, and the nurse asked me if I knew how to pause Alara strips for her while she went in with meds. Yes, ma'am, I know. How do you think we medicate our 13-ounce transparent intubated preemies?
Aw.
I'm like, yeah, we use the same stuff, guys. This
Yeah.
is getting embarrassing. Please stop.
If anything, I feel like we have extra equipment that sometimes
That we
maybe
probably
the
don't
adult
have.
side doesn't have, like the little syringe pumps and
Oh yeah, we don't have that.
like smaller versions of everything.
Yeah,
You know?
the tiny little blood pressure cuffs that can go on
so
a pinky.
cute.
Those are
Yeah.
really cute. Like
I
I
love
kind of
those.
just want one to have one. They're really cute. So I've heard a lot that dealing with sick children can be rewarding and obviously very sad.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that, or do you have any
Yes.
stories or?
I think kids being sick or having, illnesses, any kind of disease, them dying, it's super unnatural. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
It is really, really hard. But I think what keeps me going is just being able to be there for them and their families during that really challenging time that a lot of people don't have the tolerance for is really rewarding. And the kids who do make it, the kids who do get better, I just think about them sometimes.
Yeah.
When I'm going through it, I'm like, this job is worth it and it is rewarding, because there are a lot of times where I've taken care of patients where, people say they're probably not going to make it.
Yeah.
They're too far gone. They're really sick. There's no way. And then they miraculously do make it.
Yeah.
And they're coming back to your unit years later to say hi to
that's
you
cool.
or to thank you, or you're discharging them to rehab. And it's the most rewarding thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's so great to see that you're giving a child more time with their family and just the opportunity to grow into an adult, you know?
Yeah, that's really sweet. I feel like in adult we see more death. Well, not more death than you, but people decline and they don't come back.
Right.
A lot more than like miracles happening or like something spontaneous happening for them. I feel like children are like,
they're very resilient.
Exactly. And it doesn't happen a lot with adults. I think I get a lot of questions like, how do you deal with death? And it's probably the same for any nurse that deals with death, but we deal with it a lot. And so I'm like, well, it's easier for me to understand an adult passing away, not that it's justified, but they've lived a life versus a child. Obviously, like you said, it's an abnormal thing to see a child pass away.
Right. And not that it makes it any easier, but like adults, sometimes they've made choices to get to where they are, and it's like, it's still really sad.
Absolutely.
But
it's easier to swallow. You're like, okay.
Something about a kid getting cancer, there's just nothing you can say, nothing you can do.
No.
Like, that's messed up.
Right. Every time.
Yeah.
I said on here, like, kids decompensate differently than adults too. I've heard like they're doing great, and then boom, all of it's like crazy and I feel like most of the time, not that it doesn't happen with adults, but you'll see something teetering and you're like, hold on, that's happening, this is happening, they're going to crash.
Right.
Does that happen?
I think with kids, they do show you the signs, but the time that you have to address it is like cut in half.
Yeah.
Like, the moment they are showing the sign, you need to recognize it and take care of it. Otherwise, they will code.
Yeah.
Like, there's a very short time period before that happens.
Yeah.
And I think with time, your assessment skills just get better and you can detect it a lot quicker when they are decompensating.
Do you ever feel like you have that intuition too? Like sometimes you walk in a room and it feels gloomy. There's no signs yet, and you're like, and then something happens.
Or you just look at them and you're like,
something doesn't look right.
You look a little tired.
Yeah. I don't like
assess
those.
You.
Yes, I actually hate those. Like you get a really good report and you go in and you're like, no, something's gonna happen this shift for sure. And then you like try to tell the doctor, and they're like, well, what's going on? You're like, nothing yet, but I promise something's gonna hapen.
My spidey senses.
Senses. And I feel like that comes with time too. Like people are like, how do I know? It just time.
Don't you also feel like it's funny being a travel nurse? Like, I don't know if this happens to you, but for me, like, I think because people don't know me or like they haven't worked with me, they just assume I'm like a new grad or something.
Yes.
Like I get treated like a new grad all the time. Like
all the time.
One time I detected, like this was at my most recent assignment, my patient was decompensating. I recognized it, called the doctor. We did all the things. And they were like, wow, you're really good at this.
Good job. You're like, I've been doing this for a few years.
I've been a nurse for a while, guys. Like, why do you?
I'm not. No, you're
why
right.
do you just assume travelers are like 1 year in or something?
Yeah, they do. They do though. That does happen to me too. I didn't think about it like that, but that happens a lot. And you're just like, okay, guys, like I know what I'm doing. I don't know. I'm also one of the people though. Like if someone is treating me that way, I just kind of let them for a while because I'm like, whatever. Like, you can think I'm new grad, I guess, but I'd just like prove them wrong, I guess.
Right. I think when I first started traveling, it was really hard for me because I came from a place where everyone knew me. I had my people. I knew everyone. Like it was just, it's really crazy to go from that to having your abilities questioned all the time. It's like you're starting all over again.
True.
I like hated travel nursing when I first started. Like I liked certain aspects of it, but it was that I couldn't get past. Like I missed the like community, knowing my staff members and like knowing the doctors and stuff like that. But with time, like you kind of just, I think that was like an ego thing too, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like it was,
I feel like the more you get confident with yourself too, that happened to me too. Like the first year, I luckily I had my husband. I texted him like, all these people think I'm stupid, you know, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And maybe they didn't really think I'm stupid. They didn't know me, but my ego was like, these people don't understand that I know these things and whatnot. But as I've grown as a nurse, I don't care because I do know.
Exactly.
Like if I'm like, I'm very confident and I'm like, they can think whatever they want. But you're right. Like when I first started, that bothered me so bad.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't these people understand? Like I'm just as smart as them. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
For me.
No,
anyway.
it really doesn't. Because it's like if you have a situation, you'll be able to handle it and then they'll see.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And then they'll give you like the hard patients and like the sick ones. And you're just like, man, I wish you still thought I was dumb.
I know. Man, I wish I shouldn't have showed that. That actually happens every single time. I'm getting like the patients that are 1 foot out the door and I'm like, I wish I had a more critical patient. And then like I'll prove myself and then I get the worst and quote unquote the worst patients, like the most sick patients, and you're on your feet all day. You're like, why did I
like,
did I
careful
prove
what you
myself?
wish for.
Yeah, careful what you wish for because you will get those patients.
Absolutely.
So you're not only a nurse for the child, you're a nurse for family as well. Like what type of stuff gets lost in translation? Are families more, this might be one of those things like from the Reddit post, like for us families are I guess in the general public is uneducated. The health literacy is low, and it's not their fault. It's society's fault. Like we don't prepare people for being sick in the hospital.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe it's worse with children.
I think there's a spectrum. Like there are some parents, like when I had peds clinicals and when I was choosing peds as my like nursing specialty, people were always like, oh, the parents, like they're the worst, watch out. But my experience was that they actually like, they're so worried about their kid that they are willing to let you do whatever you need to do to take care of them, kind of.
Yeah.
That was like what I saw, and that's kind of what drew me to peds. But then, you know, after spending a couple of years, I've noticed like there's all different kinds of parents. Like some take that approach where they're like, clearly I don't know anything about my kid being sick in the ICU. Like do what you got to do to help them feel better. And those situations are really nice. But there are definitely parents who think they know everything and they do their own research and they want to go based off of that instead of like what is medically indicated or what you're supposed to do. And that can be really hard and it gets really tricky depending on like what it is. But there's definitely a spectrum. There are parents that are really difficult and they don't let you do your job.
Yeah. Just like in the adult world.
Yeah. Where they question you.
Yeah. Which they have, like, I always have to take a step back because it can be frustrating, honestly. If you've been working, especially let's say you work 3 in a row, you've been with this patient for this many hours and no, it's not their whole life or anything, but you know a lot about this patient and what they're going through.
Yeah.
And then sometimes having difficult family members, it's hard. It's hard, period. It's not my favorite, but I always take a step back and I'm like, if this was me in their shoes, I would probably be asking the same questions. I'd probably be just as curious or concerned or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, but it's hard as a healthcare worker to take a step back sometimes.
Totally. I mean, asking questions I think is great. Like they should be asking questions. They should have like a like skepticism, I feel like, but it's a fine line between them like caring about their kid and just like then just being like disrespectful, you know? Like that's never fun to deal with.
No. It's really not.
Yeah.
Do you guys are ethics ever questionable?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wondered if I always feel like it is worse there because again, you're dealing with parents who are worried about their child. And so of course they want everything, for the most part, want everything done for them or even in situations where it's like not the best outcome.
It gets really tough. I think like the ethics that you deal with in adult ICU, you deal with a lot of ethical issues in peds ICU too. They just look a little different.
Yeah.
Like an example I can think of is that there are a lot of situations where unfortunately your patient isn't brain dead. They have some level of brainstem functioning, but there's no hope for like a meaningful recovery. There's the option to be like on a trach vent with the G-tube, stuff like that. And that's obviously like the parent's choice, but it can be really hard to get patients from like, you know, like long-term care facilities or nursing facilities where their family, like it's been like years that they've been in this state. Their family kind of like doesn't come to see them anymore. And they're literally just in and out of the hospital all the time with respiratory infections or whatever. And then they go back to the facility, you see them again a couple months later. That can be really hard because you just feel so bad for the patient in that situation. You know, like they have no joy, no happiness. They're just in and out of the hospital all the time. And like, I try to just remind myself in situations like that, like it is the family's choice. Like whether you like it or not, it is their child and they can choose what they want to happen. And I've just kind of accepted that at this point because it's not worth like the stress of worrying about it, if that makes sense. Like that sounds awful, but I think I just,
No, it doesn't.
I've just learned to accept that it's always going to be the family's choice.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, unfortunately, there's like some very realistic things we have to accept. Yeah. And that's one of them. And I bring this stuff up not to shit on family members, you know, by the way, people who get upset with me. It's not why I bring it up. I bring it up because there are quite a few non-medical professionals that listen or watch my stuff. And this is a form of educating them of what we see that can be really difficult that they don't see.
Exactly. There are so many, like I've met so many families where they admit like their kid is like 15 now and something happened to them when they were 5. And they're like, if I had known that this is what their life was going to look like, I would have never done it.
Exactly.
And that is so sad. I feel like there should be better systems in place to educate them on like what the implications of their decisions are. Like if you decide to transplant your child, this is what the next couple of years are going to look like for you if they make
even
it
if it's
long.
like worst case scenario, I feel like we should be telling people instead of best case scenario, we should tell them worst case scenario because unfortunately, especially in the adult world, when people are sick, they're sick.
Right.
Most of the time, they're not coming back from it. Obviously, this depends on what their
they're there
diagnosis
for.
is.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, they're really sick. And like specifically for us, something I complain about a lot is my 99-year-old Meemaw, who's a full code.
I love your Meemaw videos.
Oh, Meemaw and Pawpaw. And I didn't realize that's not a thing in every state. Like, what do you call your grandparents?
Well, I'm from Afghanistan, so I don't call them anything in English.
Okay, but see, do you have like a nickname for them?
Yeah.
Okay, so my friend is from Iowa, one of my best friends, and she's like, it's so funny listening to like Southern or Midwestern people call their grandparents something. Like we just say this is grandma last name, grandpa last name, or first name. I'm like, no, I got a Mimi, I got a Meemaw, I got a Mama, Papa. Pee-pee. That one's stupid. I don't use that one.
That's so
I tried
funny.
to use a pee-pee and a Mimi, and I was like, that's weird. But it's just funny. Anyway, back on my thing. This is what happens to me. I guess sidetracked. Like a full code on a 99-year-old Meemaw is a very typically bad decision because they're typically frail. They're even on a healthy person.
Yeah.
The percentage of people coming back and living a life full of quality is low. It's like 30%. And that was the last time I looked. That was several years ago. It's very low. For someone who's of 99-year-old age, their statistics go way down. And so I'm like, I don't think family understands the implications, the worst case scenario that could happen to this person.
Yeah.
So as we might be saving them for a few more minutes or days, the truth is it's probably not going to save their life in the end when they're that old or frail.
It's so sad because like all of these things could be alleviated with like a strong like palliative care or hospice support.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's probably like this for you too. Working in the pediatric ICU, it's almost like no one ever wants to bring that up or talk about it. There's such a taboo around it, and it's like it doesn't have to be this end all be all. It actually is good for the patient. It helps them live like a more comfortable life, a more meaningful life,
and it helps them have a peaceful death versus a traumatic one.
Absolutely.
That's something I'm really passionate about. I will be the bad guy if I need to be the bad guy because the patient deserves more. People don't deserve to die traumatically ever.
At my staff job, we were trying to, one of the many committees I was part of, we were trying to create like a screening tool where when a patient gets admitted to the ICU, we screen them to see if palliative care is something that should be consulted for them. And it was like this huge struggle. Like it was really hard for anyone to get on board with it. But I just think if we utilized palliative care more, like all of our patients would be better off.
Absolutely. We have like our hands tied a lot of the times. Like even with like if a patient comes in with an advanced directive and they say DNI, and people that don't know, I do not want to be resuscitated in any way, shape, or form. And then family can come in and switch it. And I'm like, that actually makes me so angry.
That's wild.
It happens every day.
They can just change it.
Way more in the state of California than I've seen in other states I've worked in.
Interesting.
And it is so frustrating because isn't it the patient's choice? I thought that we were dealing with the patient. And then brother that hasn't seen patient for so many years comes in and changes it.
Yeah.
Because maybe they feel guilty they weren't in their life and this is their way
want more time.
They want more time. And it drives me nuts because I'm like, you know what? That's a consequence of your guys' actions. Well, no matter what the situation is for why you don't see each other or whatever, this person wanted to not be a full code. And now look at their life. Like that really bothers me.
Yeah. No, that's a huge ethical issue. That should not be a thing.
This should not be a thing, but it's such a thing.
Especially if the patient already took the liberty of deciding.
That's why I'm like, isn't that what this piece of paper is for? Like, it's so crazy. But again, I just bring it up for people to be aware, like, you know, make your family well known of what you want.
Yeah.
I don't care what your age is. Like, you should have an advanced directive, but you should, like, tell them. I was telling them, I will haunt you. If you switch this, I will stay on this earth a little longer to haunt your ass. Do not do that to me. You know, whatever it may be. Like, I just am like,
that's really funny.
Can we just let people, it's okay to die. There are worse things than death.
You know, I think that's like one of my favorite things about just my journey with nursing is I mean, obviously I've never been faced with it, but I'm not scared of death. Like, it's a part of life, and it can be a very beautiful release. It doesn't have to be this thing that you're holding, like you're just holding on for dear life to like avoid.
Right.
It is normal. It is natural. None of us should be like avoiding it or scared of it. You know
right.
what I mean?
No,
especially when you're like 99.
Yes. Like, let 99-year-old Meemaw go.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
For anyone looking to get into pediatrics, what would you tell them?
I think first of all, don't lose hope, because I feel like when I made it clear that I wanted to be in peds, first of all, there were so many other nursing students that wanted to do peds too. And there were so many instructors or, counselors or whatever. Everyone was like, oh, good luck. It's oversaturated. You're not going to be able to get a job. It's not true. Like, there is a dire need for nurses across the board. Whatever specialty you want, you can most likely get into. So just don't listen to any of that nonsense, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, I think getting a job at like an actual children's hospital is really important, because there's a lot of hospitals that have like a small peds ER or like a 5-bed peds med surge or whatever. I think those types of units and hospitals are good to go to maybe when you're like a little further into your career and you want a slower pace.
Yeah.
But if you are passionate about peds, you should work at a children's hospital that has a big facility, a big center, lots of resources, because that's where you're going to get the best experience.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I worked in the ER. I feel like that helped a lot because I got experience with peds.
Yeah.
And so I think that made me stand out when I applied for a PICU job.
Oh, yeah.
But if you can get a residency, a job, anything, like just try to get your foot in the door somehow. And then I feel like getting a job in the specialty is a lot easier that way.
Yeah. I always tell people too, like, don't be afraid to go talk to the manager. Not in interview. Just like, hey, I'm in nursing school. I'm thinking about coming here. Ask them for tips.
Absolutely.
How can I get on your unit? Because every unit's different. Every hospital's different. Some people are like, well, my hospital doesn't allow new grads. I think that's wild, but then go to the next one. There's got to be, I mean, I know that there's like rural areas and whatnot, but go to the next one. Or ask, even if they say we don't hire new grads, go ask the manager. Because I swear sometimes they just put stuff on there. Just to put stuff on there.
For sure. Yeah. And honestly, like if you're really passionate about it, move. Like move to a bigger city with more children's hospitals or whatever. Like it's going to be worth it, because once you get that strong foundational experience, you can go anywhere, you can work anywhere.
Yes, I love that. How do you deal with being in peds? So this is like goes on with like other tips for people. I think you guys, one thing that turned me away from peds early, me now, I would be able to do it. But me as a new grad, I didn't know how to handle that type of thing. But abuse cases, there's a lot of abuse and neglect cases that come in. How do you handle that without going to jail?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
First of all, I think you have to be really good at separating your emotions from the situation, which is like so difficult when you're dealing with child abuse and neglect. But I always try to keep in mind that I have had cases that look like abuse and they end up not being abuse. So it's like you just have to remind yourself, like, these parents are innocent until they're proven guilty, and you have no right to treat them any sort of way until you know for sure what's going on.
Yeah.
It can be really hard because sometimes it does look really like you're like, there's no way this isn't abuse. But you find the kid has some crazy clotting disorder that caused their brain bleeds instead of like, being shaken or whatever. So I just try to keep that in mind. And this older nurse that I worked with at my staff job, like, one thing she would always say to us is that it's not our place to pass judgment. I mean, she was like very Florence Nightingale vibes, like she was older, like nurse, like
very seasoned.
It's
a nice way to
she
put it.
thought a very certain type of way, but I did find this advice helpful. Like, it's not our place to pass judgment on anyone. Like, we're there to take care of the child, do the best that we can by the kid. It's not our job to, like judge or find the evidence or do any of those things. Like, that's separate from what we do as nurses, if that makes sense. Like,
you're not a detective.
Exactly.
Even though it's fun to think we are as girlies, it's fun to think we're FBI investigators, but like, it's true with like even with adult patients, something that gets brought up a lot with us is like pain management. Well, they're a pain seeker, they're a pill seeker. They're looking for narcotics. And if they are, like, we don't know that at the end of the day. And if they are, it's not my place to be the person to say, you don't get these. That's not my
Right.
place. I'm there to
Exactly.
treat pain. They tell me they're in pain. I'm going to, okay, cool. They're not overdosing, you know, on my watch. That's the only thing I have to look out for. It's not our job to judge these people. Chronic pain looks a lot different than my pain, where I don't have chronic pain. So believing your patient first and foremost. But
Yeah.
you brought up that abuse cases sometimes, or cases can look like abuse and then they're not.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's rare.
Yeah.
I will say it's more often if it looks like abuse, it probably is.
Yeah, right.
But there have been cases where everyone is like so shocked by the end result.
That it wasn't.
Yeah. And it's like, imagine treating that parent like shit, you know,
And then
like
they
treating them like
already
a criminal
feel-
when they're not.
Exactly.
Like, that's not your place.
Have you seen the documentary Taking Care of Maya?
Yes. We actually, Hasib and I watched it recently.
Oh my God. It was mind blowing.
Wait, okay. I want to hear your, like, what are your
Perspective.
thoughts?
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I could talk about this all day long because I love shit like this. I have two frames of thought.
Okay.
One is I'm a healthcare worker. Okay. I don't know if I believe that, you know, the healthcare workers were out to get this family, because you just said it. How many cases of abuse and neglect do you guys see every freaking day? And I don't think the general public realizes that.
Yeah.
We take care of a lot of people, even in the adult world. Adult abuse cases are real. We call APS all the time, Adult Protective Services. Abuse is real and it happens every single day. So I understand where they got it from, where they got the inkling of this mom is crazy. Also, the Gypsy Rose case. Gypsy
Yeah.
Rose was released today from prison.
Today?
Today.
No way.
My TikTok has been filled with it. Today
Oh
she
my
was released.
gosh.
Her case, I think, was huge for everyone to realize that Munchausen's by proxy is a big thing.
It is.
And they say it's rare, but I've read a lot of cases about it. It's just interesting. It's very interesting, and it can happen. So those things being into place, I'm like, I get where they got the mom was abusing her.
For sure.
Not to mention ketamine in the United States has not been used. Well, first of all, she had a rare
Pain disorder.
Pain disorder.
Yeah.
And it's rare. So not a lot of people know about it. Number two, we don't typically treat with ketamine in that way for children. So I understand from my
Yeah.
point of view.
And for that disease.
And for that
Yeah.
disease. And she had to go to another country to get the ketamine and to get the prescription. So there's a lot of things that make sense. Of if I was the nurse being told this, I would be charting the hell out of this because it sounds, whoa. Just to cover, you know, if you don't know, we're taught we have to cover our ass. The nurse, not the hospital necessarily,
Yeah.
cover the nurse's ass because we're the one taking care of this person. Let's say that Maya was being abused and we decided to neglect all of that information. We're going to face legal action.
Right.
most
I mean, there
likely.
was a Netflix documentary a couple years ago about that poor little boy. I'm sure you saw that one too.
Which one was it? Oh,
He was somewhere in California
Yes.
and it was very obvious,
Yes.
very clear he was being abused and he ended up dying.
and no one did anything.
Yeah. And so it's like, I agree with you. I think watching that as a picky nurse, I kept telling Hasib the whole time, I was like, something, like there is information that's being left out of this documentary 100%. Like these healthcare workers don't wake up every day and want to tear families apart. Like that's not how it works.
That's what I didn't like about the way
it's-
they perceive that.
It's very biased. I will say it sounds like there were many ways in which they went about things the wrong way. They were very disrespectful.
Yeah.
They should have never treated the family poorly. Like, I don't think what they did is right, but I do think there's information that's missing.
Absolutely.
For sure. Like,
There's a lot of takes on this. Like, for instance, healthcare worker violence from family members is very real, happens every single day. We are hit, kicked, punched, stabbed. Anything you can think of, murdered by family members and patients every single day. So things happen, and I understand why they even brought security into and told the mom she couldn't come back, because it sounded like to me that she was being verbally aggressive and escalating the situation. So I do understand why she was probably told she can't come here, especially if they're investigating an abuse case. I don't understand, because I don't work in peds, why it was like 3 months that she went without getting to see her mom. And then, of course, if you guys haven't watched it, I need to put a spoiler alert before this, but she committed suicide.
yeah,
And it's like, holy shit. Like, that's a lot of this I feel like could have been avoided
totally.
from both ends. There's misinformation and miseducation to the general public. And then on our end, maybe things were not done properly.
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
legally,
It
I don't
sounds
know.
like something, like there's definitely a big piece that's missing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't really form like my full opinion on it. I
Yeah.
do think the family was wronged.
Yeah.
However, the way that healthcare workers and CPS and all that was painted in the documentary, I don't really believe is fair.
I definitely feel that, because I was like, they're making people scared to go to the hospital with this documentary.
And that's not good.
It's not good.
Mm-mm.
They're making people not want to trust healthcare workers, specifically nurses and social workers, and even the pediatric doctors.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is another piece that it sounds like that doctor has had several complaints against her. Why are we not taking those more serious? Not we, administration.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to money at the end of the day.
Totally.
And that bothers me. I'm like, if you guys would just do your job and take these complaints seriously and look into them in the first place, we wouldn't have things like Dr. Death. We wouldn't have things like taking care of Maya. So I'm just like, do your job from an administrative point of view, and maybe we wouldn't have even seen that happen.
Totally. I will say, in my experience, I've been a pediatric ICU nurse for 5 years. I have the total opposite experience. It's like usually it's very obvious a child is being abused, but there's no evidence. Or oftentimes what happens is if you apply enough pressure, someone will confess. And that's how you get the child in a safe place. But oftentimes it's really hard to get to that point. There's no evidence. It's really hard to get
even
these
watch and deal with, because you feel like, I'm sure you feel like, what can I even do from here to help this patient?
Because that documentary made it seem like they're just ripping kids away from families daily.
They did.
Yeah,
it did make,
it's like that's not how it works. It's way harder than that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had to bring it up because I don't know who else to talk to about it. So I was like, this is an actual pediatric nurse. I bet she sees this shit.
I have had patients whose parents very clearly have Munchausen's by proxy. Like,
isn't that scary?
It's wild. It's wild. I mean, the first time it happened to me, my patient's PICC line kept getting disconnected, and it was like an ongoing thing. Like, it happened to multiple nurses, and like one night the patient's mom asked me, like, what would happen if this fell on the floor? Like, would she get an infection? And I was like, oh my God, she is disconnecting it. Like, that's when it clicked for me. Like, we keep having issues with her PICC line. We can't figure out what it is. And then when she asked me that question, I was like, I think it might be her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild.
I have a fascination with like psych histories and things like that, or like just learning about psych, and Munchausen by proxy is like very interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's very sad for many reasons, but it's just like crazy. It feels crazy to see. Like, you're like,
it's very jarring.
Yeah, jarring. Yeah. It's weird. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about it without like, I don't know enough about it too.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, is there even do you know if there's even like a cure? Or I mean like a treatment, not a cure.
I don't think so.
I don't think there is.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Do you have any last things to tell people? Anything you want to say about nursing or travel nursing or being a pediatric nurse?
I think, both of us being on social media, I think there's a lot of like negativity surrounding nursing on social media, and like, don't get me wrong, it's a hard job. Yeah. I have days where I'm like, why did I do this to myself? Like, why? You have bad days, and the bad days are bad, but I don't regret becoming a nurse ever. Like, I'm so happy I chose this career, and I think that like, if you are passionate about it and you consider the pros, like, it is absolutely a career that's worth it, and you shouldn't let the negativity get to you.
That's really great. I feel the same way. I make a lot of jokes about like our job and stuff, but that's how I cope with humor, is I just have to laugh about it. But also at the end of the day, my husband and I talk about this all the time. Would I pick another career? No, I really wouldn't.
I really can't see myself doing anything else.
The pros outweigh the cons, which is schedule flexibility for me. And then every job is going to have sucky things that go with it.
Right.
Teachers, I don't know, paramedics.
Or even like cushy corporate 9-to-5s.
Yeah.
Not all of them are that happy.
No. Hell, I could never do a desk job either.
Yeah.
Like, I like that we have to run around a little bit sometimes. Sometimes it's too much. When I look down, it's like 15,000 steps. I'm like, that's a lot for just work. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Of course.
Seriously,
Thanks for having me. I fangirled so hard when you asked me to be here.
I was fangirling. I was like, this is cool. Like, honestly, getting to meet, like, I consider a lot of people my online friends, and I'm just
Totally.
like, we're friends already, and then I get to
Yeah.
meet them in real life.
It's
and
so great.
It's really cool. Where can people find you?
Layla the Nurse on Instagram and TikTok.
Perfect. Well, thank you again.
Thanks.
And I hope you had fun. Hope it
I
wasn't
did. It was
too
great.
too much.
Oh no,
Okay.
it was super fun.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.